welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining me again. Super fired up for today's video because you know from the thumbnail, I have bought a new motor for my 68 Dart. Very excited about this, very lucky, fortunate to be able to make this purchase because this stuff does not come for sale. You know from the thumbnail, I have bought an R3 W8 motor. So fired up about this. This thing is ex-NASCAR. It was out of a super late model. I'm going to talk all about how I got the deal, which I actually had to make in a few different purchases. I bought the block originally 6 months ago and then was fortunate enough to get the heads and intake later on down the road, only about a month ago. So we're going to show you guys everything to do with that. I'm going to talk about what's going on with the block. I'm going to talk about the plans for it. I got to do some stuff to the car. We'll talk all about it and show you guys this motor. And I'll start off by saying too that this is my first R3 block. It's my first W8, obviously. First W head motor, but I do know a bit about the original stock Mopar architecture, stock small block stuff, of course. You guys know the channel. I don't know a ton about this stuff though. I have learned a bit. That's why it took so long to get the video out, because I needed to do some research, learn about it, figure some stuff out, come up with a good plan. But I'm ready for the video, so let's get into it right now. And I know this video is going to be a bit of a ramble. It's going to be a little bit all over the place. So I'm going to do my best. It's a lot of information, a lot of different stuff to talk about. And I'm going to do my best. So bear with me. Okay. One quick note before I get going too far too. The 414 stroker motor is not for sale. So before you guys start getting into the comments, oh, you selling your motor? I am not. It's staying there. This thing's going to take me a little bit of time to get built. So let's just take a look. Here she is, boys. And this is pretty much exactly how I got it. I have not stripped it down. I haven't taken it apart. I've been itching to, but I needed to make a video before I dove right into it. Let's pull it out a little bit and take a better look at her. Okay, so here she is. Let's talk a little bit about it, how I got it, where it came from, and then we'll pull the heads off, the intake off, and we'll talk more further about it. So, like I said, lucky, fortunate to make this purchase. It is an R3 low deck W8 headed motor. It's 360 cubic inches, and it was running in a late model car just a few years ago. And the story goes that they had it, they have like 3 or 4 of these motors in action all the time, and something went bad on a different motor, so they pulled the heads off to put onto that motor so they could keep running. They run like 3 or 4 of these at a time. So the heads came off, the short block got pushed underneath the bench, and then it sat there. And then about 6 months ago, they came across it, didn't know what to do with it. And then lucky for me, my good buddy Brandon there hooked me up. He knows I've been looking for one of these. He runs late model as well. And he's good buddies with these guys. And he was fortunate enough to make the deal happen for me. So shout out to my buddy Brandon, hooking it up. And that's the thing, if you guys want to come across this stuff, it's all in late model. That's where all this stuff is. So, and for those guys who don't quite know exactly what I'm talking about, an R block is Mopar's race division block. These things were around in, I guess, like the 90s or so. They had an R1, R2, and then finally the R3 with the most desirable one. And it offered all kinds of improvements over like a stock LA style block. The main one being strength. So it has like 4-bolt main caps, improved oiling. There's all kinds of structural stuff that makes this block way stronger than like a stock LA block. So they say a stock LA block can take like 650 horse to 700 horse max kind of thing. These things can eat 1,000, no problem. So that's why NASCAR ended up using this in all the Dodge stuff. And I think that's primarily why these blocks were developed. So I bought it as a short block assembly only, but it was complete. So it didn't have the heads intake, obviously, but it had the block, it had the cam, lifters, crank rods, pistons, obviously. It's got the cool Mopar water pump in the front. They were running a belt drive because it was a dry sump motor. And we'll pull the heads off here in a second and show you guys more of that. But so I made the deal for the short block 6 months ago. And then they came across the heads just about a month ago. We let the dust clear on the first deal because, like I say, nobody wants to let this stuff go. Got the block, put it under this bench over here, and then I just waited. And then 6 months later, he was talking to his buddies again and goes, hey man, Joe's really looking for those heads. And they're like, well, we got them back now. So yeah, we'll sell those too. Got the heads and intake. And here we are, almost complete. I am missing a few things, but you know, we got a really good start. Late model, super late, 360 cubes. They would run it at 7,000 to 8,000 RPM for 200 laps, and they had to run it with a 390 carb. That was whatever rules, regulations, that's just what I was told. And the thing made 680 horsepower there. More of the legend behind it is most of these things were built at Petty Enterprises, so Richard Petty Camp. Apparently that's where this thing came from. Super cool, super fortunate. Let's pull those heads and intake off and take a look at the short block and just talk a bit more of the architecture. It did come with this spacer too. They were running this spacer, but just look at this. We'll show you guys this further in a minute. So here is the short block. This is how I bought it originally, just like that. Pretty dirty. Obviously everything needs a complete rebuild, but like I say, I'm so fortunate to get all the really hard stuff to get. So it is a low deck motor. There's like 4 variations of these R blocks. All the NASCAR late model guys, they all went for the low deck because they can only run 360 cubes, and they're all about weight on top. So you can see even the block back here, they've lightened it up. And if you look at where the head lands versus like the distributor hole, it's very close. So this thing's been decked heavily, but I bought it sight unseen because it was the deal, and that's how the deal had to go. After we got it, we checked out the bore size, and very lucky in the regards that it has a 4080 bore. Now, these guys had to run max 360 cubes. They'd lighten them up. They'd run them at 360 cubes. There's no way it's less than that. I don't know what the crank is yet, but at a 4080 bore, it must have like a 3.4 or a 3.45 crank, which is great for me because it could have a 3.2 crank or a 3.3 crank and a bigger bore. The fact that it's got a small bore means the crank size is bigger, which is great because I plan on using the crank and rods that are in it. Now, the block itself, because you can see that it is a Siamese, so there is no water in between. That's this extra water hose here from the pump, feeds the block, keeps it cool. But I run the numbers on it. Speaking of numbers and whatnot, there's the R3 insignia. That's how you can find these blocks really easy, is they're written R3 right there, front of the head. Spin it around here. And then there's your Mopar casting numbers, Mopar signatures. So if you guys want the numbers, that's them there. I'll show you this book here. So I got this book. This is really good. It is an older book, so it's kind of out of date. And I guess it came out after the W9 heads came out because it barely talks about W8. But W8 and W9 are like near identical, but the W9s are like a lighter version from what I know. So anyway, I ran the numbers on the block in here, and it says that this block can take up like to a 422 bore. So that's amazing. So I can put a big bore in it, run that 3.4, 3.45 crank. Once I take it apart, I will know what size the crank is. And then I'm probably gonna bore it to like a 4185, and I'll have 380 cubic inches with like a short stroke. So this thing will RPM like crazy, which is awesome. And I talked to these guys, and it was already an RPM motor. Those things, they're all running around like 7,000 to 8,000 RPM because it's got a big camshaft in it too. So it's solid roller, obviously. Solid roller, and we kind of preliminary checked the specs on it. It's got to have about 700 thou lift. Massive camshaft in this thing. And another great deal about the whole thing, I got the camshaft, which is special to these blocks again, because the lifter angle is different than stock. So it's a 48-degree lifter, which means it straightens the push rod out to the head. So in high RPM, push rod is straighter up and down, creates more power, less deflection, all that stuff. And then the lifters that came with it are keyway lifters. So they can't rotate solid roller, obviously, and they're even offset. So again, that just lines that push rod straighter with the rockers on the heads, and then less deflection, more power. And then look at this bossed area. So the whole lifter valley, if you look at a lifter area on a stock one, it's puny compared to this. This thing is so stiff. So, kind of talk about the bore spacing, crank size, a bit about the cam and lifters. The cams are special too for 48 degree because they actually move the location of the lifters as well, again, to keep them straighter. And those work specifically with the W heads. Okay, where else are we? Oh, so it is a dry sump motor as well. So they were running an external pump and a dry sump system, and that's where they pump the oil in through the front of these blocks. This is not stock as well. This improves the problem that we all know about the stock small block Mopars and the one that I fixed on that other video where I put the crossover in there. Now, a lot of guys will say you can just pump it right into here. I hear guys saying that you gotta run 2 lines. So I do have this back here. So all you R guys, let me know, is this a dual feed system right there? I'm not sure. I'm going to talk to the race team too and see what they were doing exactly. I do plan to do what they were doing because that's just the safest route for me. But I'm not totally planning on keeping it dry sump. And that is actually one thing I do not get to keep. I don't get to keep the oil pan. The guys need that back because they still run 3 other motors and they want the plate back too, but plate doesn't work for me. Anyhow, I might try to work them and try to keep the pan. We'll see. So to switch it to a wet sump, I'm gonna have to drill out the lifter valley so oil falls down, and I hear that that is better for a street engine. So that's much better for me. You guys know this will be still a street motor. So probably gonna switch to a wet sump, might keep this, run an external pump because the cap on the bottom will not have provisions for an oil pump itself. So I'll probably run a single stage, buy a pan, put my own pickup in it, run a single stage over on this side, and then pump oil straight into there. Maybe feed that backside as well, depending on what you guys let me know what to do. Show you guys the back of the block here too, and the bolt pattern on the crank is like Mother Mopar, which is awesome because some of those cranks, from what I've learned, don't have that pattern. This does. So again, you R block guys, let me know what you guys think about the crank, and like obviously I got to get it up and pull the pan off. If you've been following along with the channel, you guys know that my lift is at my dad's place because we're dropping a 347 stroker into his Ranchero right now. So he's got my lift. That's why I don't have this up. And I'm not totally ready to dive into it because, you know, I'm going to take some time with it. But let me know what you guys think about the crank. So it also will have a Chevy rod. Ugh, I know, Chevy. But they all kind of do that. They get a 6-inch rod in there, which keeps the piston down further. And that's kind of how you make these combos all work. So lightning holes there, I kind of showed you guys that. Come around to the front, it's got the super cool Mopar race pump with those external lines. Again, different than stock, feeding the block. ATI dampener, here's how they were running the external oil pump, which is very similar. I'm gonna have to do something very similar as well. Talked about that. This is cool. I don't know if I probably won't keep this feature, but this is how they're pumping the oil in. And then this will go to spray bars in the valve cover to spray the springs down, because when they're driving around at 8,000 RPM for 200 laps, they're spraying the springs to keep them cool, which is another really neat feature. So again, just super cool stuff. Okay, let's throw those heads on, or let's just take a look at them. Okay, so let's talk about the W8 heads. So again, not a NASCAR historian or anything like that, but I'll show you guys all this stuff here. This was late 90s truck series is what I kind of hear is where they kind of ended up. So here's all the casting numbers, Mopar W8, there's the cast. And then this insignia here, Chapman Racing heads. So Chapman and Arrington, I think, were the 2 companies that were porting these things out for truck series. And I did find flow numbers on these heads, and I do plan on getting them flowed myself as well, just to see what they do. Obviously, they all got to get cleaned up and everything. Everything was sitting, but again, they're all complete. So they take a special rocker. I'll tell you guys the flow numbers that I did find. So I'll just tell you the peaks at 700,000. It said they flowed 354. So if you know anything about flow numbers, these things are more than capable of 700 plus horsepower, which is awesome. So I'm super fired up about that. So, and if you guys know more about these heads, let me know. Here's the numbers. So tell me what y'all know. Let's take a look at these ports here. And these things are massive. You compare this to like a stock head, and it's absolutely ridiculous, the size difference. I'll show you guys the intake, and that'll give you a good indicator. And the port size themselves, I don't know like the volume, but they measure like 2.1 by like 1.36 or something like that. So it's like a big port. 1.37, 2.1. So not only are the ports bigger, but if you compare this to a stock head, the way it's sitting right now, you can see that the intake runner is raised up. It sits like a stock head would be sitting right here on the deck. This thing's about an inch taller, so that's a really big raised up intake port. The exhaust port is raised as well, so that just creates a better path for the air and fuel into the chamber. And these heads are actually a 15-degree valve angle as well, compared to a stock Mopar, which is like 18 degree. So again, raised ports, improved valve angle, and all that is just to help these things flow more. And again, patterns are different, like exhaust patterns different, headers are going to be an issue, all that stuff's going to be an issue. But we got lots of issues. We're going to work through it. And they do take a special rocker and valve cover as well, but I'm still talking to that race team, and they're looking to find me a set of both. So I'm probably going to end up with both of those. If not, I'll be hitting you guys up to help me out. Let's stand this up, take a look at the chambers. So it's a tight chamber. There was a couple options. I'm pretty sure these are a 59cc chamber. It was that or a 47. It looks like these are like a 59 though. So I'll probably measure those out too. Well, I definitely will at some point and find out exactly. And they kind of look all dirty, but this stuff just flakes right off. By the way, that intake valve is a 218. Yeah, it's like 2.18 something. It's massive, absolutely massive. This is kind of cool too. This is the driver's side head, and they have cut a section out and welded it up. Now I am assuming they've done that just to lighten them up, because if you compare it to like the other side, they've removed all this material. So they've removed like a good slug of material. They obviously didn't need the mounting holes because they're running it over here behind the motor plate. So they cut it all out and blocked it off. And that's the only reason I could think to do that. And you guys saw the intake on the thing. It's like a dry intake. So the water lines out of the back of the head, front of the head, they all merge out the front, and then you just create a water neck out the front. So that's something I have to work on too, but that's no problem. I'm excited about that project actually. And this is something cool too. It's like total race team stuff. They've got some stuff written here. I don't quite know what it is. It's not easy to make out. I can see a 2 here pretty easily, so that's obviously the number 2 cylinder over there. But I just love that kind of stuff. When you get actual race car stuff, and these guys are just writing stuff on things and figuring stuff out. Oh, it's just like the best too. It looks like this has been worked over too, possibly for, I don't know what, better oiling, oil return perhaps. I don't know. I see some guys put drains actually, which I might look at doing. Is there's a lot of room right here and a lot of oil gets left up in the top. So I might put drains in the back and run it back down to the pan. I'm going to be working a pan over anyway. So something to think about. Lots of stuff to think about. Super cool. Okay, let's take a look at the intake. Okay, so let's talk about the intake manifold. So Mopar casting, they've punched some numbers in here. I don't know what this means. Obviously W8, figure that one out. The other numbers I'm not sure. If you guys know what that is talking about, let me know. And over here to the casting numbers, so it is the 598 intake. There's a few different intakes. Apparently the 420 is the better of the intake, but this is the one that the team had. So this is the one I got. They were running this 1-inch spacer on it as well. Don't know if I'm gonna have room for that under the hood, but lots of port work done on this thing. Let's pop this off here. So lots of port work done, and the plenum depth is like massive. It's like an inch deeper. So I got a Super Victor over there. Obviously it's like apples and oranges comparing these things, but you know, you got to give some sort of reference. But the plenum depth is like an inch taller, so it's a way taller intake to begin with, and a way bigger port size. Like you compare the ports on like this guy compared to like an RPM intake. That's a Edelbrock Performer RPM. Big dogs. And then the Super Victor. Just monstrous. So really cool intake, really stoked on it. This is gonna be the intake I'm gonna run. I'm not gonna mess around trying to find another one. I'll try to run it with a spacer if I can, but just complements the heads too. And like I say too, it was ported by the same guys, so the ports line up directly with the heads. Okay, got the heads and intake just plopped back on there, and I'll just show you a little bit more. So there is where they clearance that head. It might be clearance for this timing cover, which again is specific to this motor, being that it is low deck. So many things, everything about this motor is something specific to it. And you can see they've clearanced it, and then they've clearanced, that's late at best, they've clearanced the timing cover too to get it there too. So lots of niche little things about it. And then here's that distributor fit up like I was saying, and then you see this one water port they have at the back, most likely because they couldn't run it right there because it would run into the distributor. So I kind of had that issue on my stock motor over there when I was running those water lines too. I had to put a low fitting there to make it fit. Well, one thing I failed to mention too, which is a major bonus about these blocks, adding to the stiffness and rigidity of them, and like these R blocks, you can run 1,000 horsepower through there, which is, you know, that's a good idea. But you see they actually have extra head bolts as well. They have extra clamping force, which works specifically with these W8. I think W7, 8, 9 heads all have those extra mounting bolts, and then no provisions. The race team shaved off the ears because they're running a motor plate. Like there's just so much information I got to tell you guys about what I've looked at, what I've learned, and stuff like that. So I know the video is kind of a bit of a ramble, kind of a bit all over the place, but so much to talk about, so much to look at. Oh, this too, I want to show you guys this. Check out I was talking about the porting, if I can get the light in there well enough. There you can see the intake running directly into the head with a really nice port job. There you go, you see the wall of it there. And that's just, this guy's just plopped right on there real quick. So once I get that bolted down there, you can see it running right in there. It's hard to get the light in there. There we go. But that's running right into the cylinder head. I love that kind of stuff, that match port job. Man, sweet. Okay, and so finally we got to talk about what we're going to have to do to the car to get that motor in there. And like I say, this is not happening quick. This motor's not for sale. This is kind of like a couple-year project. I'm going to have to do something about a motor plate. I'm going to have to upgrade the fuel system, and the big one is going to be the headers. You cannot buy headers for that motor to fit in this car. Nobody makes that. So either you custom build, modify, whatever. I'm gonna have to figure something out for that too. And then it comes into the question about the torsion bar suspension, because you guys know with headers that can be an issue, and with that motor it's gonna be a bigger problem. So lots to do. And like I say, this motor's not going anywhere. We're still gonna be racing on this motor. The 414 strokers running strong. It's just waiting for spring. We're gonna be back on the streets. So that's the new motor. This is the same motor, the old plan. We're sticking with it for a while. I've left a ton of stuff out of this video. I'm going to let you guys know more about it as I progress through that new build. Thanks for bearing with me. Let me know what you guys think. Like, share, subscribe. See you soon. Yay, yay.